谢这个中英团队的分享。下面我们有请最后一位来自南澳大学的 Tim 教授，他也是长期在世界的媒体艺术领域当中一个非常重要的艺术家他个人也尝试用多种的媒体的表现方式，多媒介跨媒体领域的方式来展现他的艺术才华和艺术思考无论从城市的空间无论从微观的这个纳米级的视觉经验和有机生物同样他也从一种舞美音乐的这种联动的表演，都带来他很多自己这个创作实践上的一种才华的展现。下面我们有请 Tim Gray 教授来跟大家分享这个报告。
你好. Thank you for this opportunity to present to the conference. I would like to talk about inventing the future, making dreams reality, which I think has great resonance with the ideas of creating and enjoying the future. Clearly, technology is fundamental to the creation and enjoyment of our future, and that's what we're here to talk about. As an artist, I've been working with technology and its the exploration of the creative use of it and the cultural context of it for nearly 40 years. And what particularly interests me is the notion of what I call the iMime, the interactive, multimedia, immersive, multi-user environment. Interactivity and multimedia, sound, vision and the body, the human-computer interface. These are the fundamentals that I've explored. But in doing that, I've been particularly interested in this idea of immersing multiple users into these types of environments. I've been a professor at the Shanghai Academy of Fine Arts and have an involvement there which goes back for nearly 10 years now. And in that time, I've been able to explore a number of possibilities, programs, applications, and set up a lab specifically looking into notions of the iMime. Now I am living in Adelaide, and where I am an adjunct professor at the University of South Australia, but also involved in a number of other pursuits here, which I would like to talk about, and use these examples of projects that I've done this year that I think exemplify some of the possibilities and realms of exploration and outcomes. A lot of the activities that I've been involved in this year centre in a new undertaking which is called Light. It's a privately funded undertaking that involves a 4-storey building in the centre of the city here that has a number of technical facilities within it, shall we say, but it goes beyond that. The fundamental core of the idea behind Light is that it be a home for innovation, creativity and hospitality. So as well as having these very sophisticated technological venues, it also has restaurants, bars, cafes, and is set up in a non-profit paradigm so that it can actually genuinely be engaged with the community and undertake not only research and development but also real-world outcomes that genuinely both engage a broad audience and the community and give back to them. The long-term goals of this are very adventurous and international, and the idea being to develop future ways of entertainment that involve mixing virtual and real performers and venues and audiences. But for today, I won't concentrate so much on that. I want to use some examples of some of the activities there. So, immersive installations have been something I've been involved in for a very long time. I used to surround audiences by using slide projectors and film projectors back in the 1980s, and then video projectors were only just starting to come online, and so on and so forth. Now we have very high-tech LED opportunities, and 2 venues within the Light building have this opportunity. One is called the Lab and the other is called Immerse. and I'm going to give examples of activities that have been going on there. As well as installations though, I'm just going to take a little sidestep for a moment and talk about performance and give an example of performance I did there recently called Ellipse, or Ellipse 01, because it's part of a ongoing series. And the way I've described this work is it's perhaps the most developed outcome of my core concerns that I've achieved in my entire lifetime. So it was, which is, you know, saying something. It was an hour-long performance, all my own original music and original graphics, all developed by me, mostly mathematically developed rather than videographically, although some video cameras were utilised. And of course the whole notions of mathematical visualization, artificial intelligence are areas that I'm very involved in and utilise. But in this instance, I'm also interested in the human-computer interface used performatively, thus an interactivity not for a general public audience, but for a performer, in this case myself. So I'm actually controlling in the venue called the Lab, which is 3 walls of which are high-res LED. I'm actually performing all the sound and vision live. It's all mine, it's original. And as I say, and part of my motivation in this is I'm intrigued in this notion of and I use leap motion in unencumbered interfaces to conduct, shall we say, a lot of what it goes on. So the hand of the creator, myself, underlies everything that I'm doing. So I'd just like to show you a little 2-minute video before we get into the actual immersive installation side of things. This is Ellipse 1. The music in that video was the opening track. After that it gets a whole lot more intense. But and anybody who cares to have a look at my website, there's the full hour-long version of it. I'll put some web links at the end of this presentation. In fact, everything that I'm talking about can be found on my website, which is an extensive history of my brother, who I work with a lot, our activities over the last 30 or 40 years. Right at the moment though, there is another undertaking happening in the Light building. Upstairs from the Lab, there is a much larger immersive space called the Ellipse, although it's actually a configurable space. At present, it's a large elliptical shape of LED with 4 meters high, and there is a month-long festival going on called Immerse Adelaide, and it's highly interactive, as you'll see, using Azure depth sensing cameras as the interface for the audience, and it's running a 20-minute program every 45 minutes, and then there are other activities going on in some of the co-joining spaces, two of which I've designed and created. Right now I'll just run a little 1 minute, this is a promotional video for the bigger aspect, so it also has some shots of food and so on and so forth, so bear with me.
Every drop of rain that hits you in a storm has lived a life you wouldn't believe.
Jaintje Jartalu, Gadlu Purna Yungi. And this land is giving all of us life.
It is the one thing that binds us all together into the future and all the way back to our earliest past.
And these are some shots taken from the actual elliptical immerse space, which give you a better sense of the relationship between the audience and this. And as I say, this is very much about trying to develop whole programs of activity. So the idea is that audiences are invited and communities invited to come into the building, have a highly intensely immersive interactive experience as a group, but then also they're free to have other experiences in other parts of the building, which may involve a meal or just a light meal, or in the cafe, either in the restaurant or in the main cafe. But also there are bars, there are other interactive zones, other activities, and so on. Part of this undertaking, I was commissioned to. I was a creative consultant on the Immerse project, but I actually, because I was busy on some other projects that I was involved in, which I'm not going to talk about today, I had to decline being the artistic director of the Immerse or Immersion show. But outside I made a work called Flow State, and flow state comes from the psychological idea of being in the flow, actually. And creatively, this is something I'm very attached to. But it was also bore the function of actually creating a space that encouraged people to enter into the space, move through the space, heading into, but be engaged, hopefully aesthetically pleased, shall we say, but not spend too long, because really what we were trying to do was get them into the main game, which was the immersion in the Ellipse. And then it was cycled, timed, it has a soundscape, it's still running at the moment, till the end of this month, and it cycles in sync with the main show, and it moves in one direction as people are entering, and then moves in the opposite direction to just subtly encourage people to flow out, and then into another bar area. So this is some video taken from the flow state and a couple of stills just to give you a sense of this. Again, dominantly mathematically generated content, although mixed with some high resolution video as well, playing on these notions of the fundamental theme of the Immersion show was to do with water. Here in Australia, as elsewhere in the world, water is a very serious issue, and in the state of South Australia, where Adelaide is the capital, it is mostly a desert state, so the issues to do with water are very crucial. And thus I was, with flow state, I was playing on this idea of not just the flow of fluids, using videos of water mixed in with mathematical similarities, but also ideas of, the flow, the creative flow, and the flow of ideas. From there, people were able to move into, if they so chose, they could go to various levels and activities within the greater building. They could go to the front bar area, and in there they could have a light snack, a drink if they so chose, but also engage with a couple of other works, one of which is a long-standing work of mine called STORM. STORM is an acronym for Stochastic Translator of Resonant Morphology. And it's perhaps my most shown work over the last 6 or 7 years in various versions. It's been shown repeatedly in China over the years, in Shanghai, Guangzhou and elsewhere. And it's actually on in 2 places here in Australia at the moment, in a solo gallery show I have in the city of Mount Gambier, and also here as part of the Immerse month-long festival in the Light Building. But it's the video I'm going to show now of that is taken from a festival at the beginning of the year called Curiosity, which is a festival of art and science held in Brisbane in the north of Queensland. But it gives you a good idea of how the interactivity, multiple users can interface with this. It appeals very easily to young people, old people, anybody can approach it. It's a rewarding interactive experience, and I think this is one of the fundamentals that exists within interactivity in the public zone, is to actually engage people, and the conceptual core of the work is about moving into transpositioning from a corporeal human state into artificial life based on a science fiction book. But that's not necessarily didactically apparent in the work, but that's the sort of fundamental core. So I'm interested in these notions of how medical science is evolving at higher and higher resolutions. So I'm trying to sort of analyse the resonant energies within bodies and then playfully let audiences engage with this. So this is a little 1-minute video of STORM. As you can see, people very enjoy that work, which is why it's been so popular all around the world. And it's a work that, or it's a modality that I continue to explore. The use of cameras as interface, be they depth cameras like the Azure in the Immersion Ellipse space, or in the case of STORM, single two-dimensional webcams, in fact. I find the camera, the unencumbered interface of a camera, it's a very practical and useful way of engaging audiences, but I'm also using microphones and listening to audiences and summing information, not just triggering things, but also summing the energy that multiple audiences, and a lot of the works that I create have layers. So the more energy that the interactors in front of the work put into it, the work goes into deeper, more sophisticated layers. So again, sort of drawing people in. And I think this is an interesting characteristic that's very worth exploring in these types of environments. In the downstairs space of the lab, where you saw in the early video the Elliptic performance, I've created another work, and this work came from a number of reasons, but in some ways it was a response to the situation of the lockdowns and the border closures and the reality of COVID, and particularly here in Australia, our inability to travel. So I've been working with 360-degree cameras for many years and have built up a library of 360-degree, very super high resolution, 12K in fact, 360 video. So I developed a program which became known as Foreign and Distant Places. We ran this, and again it's running intermittently during the course of this month and the greater Immerse event, but we've used it at different times through the year as well. So it's a lounge, so the audience is invited to come in and lounge and have a drink, but be transported to different parts of the world. I've had the privilege of having my 360-degree camera in different countries over the last 7 years. In fact, I've been shooting with that particular rig, and so taking audiences to foreign and distant places which at the moment aren't so easy to get to. And we added a soundscape to that, but also a geolocation mapping, which you'll see in the pictures and video. So that people using the ability to geolocate the audience into where the actual footage was. So rather than it just being, so to give people that real sense of cultural difference. And as an immersive, calm, lounge-like environment, this has proved very popular, I would have to say. I'd like to finish somewhat on a tangent to everything that I've shown you up till now, as well as these sort of enclosing immersive activities and environments that we've been seeing. There's other opportunities to create immersion. Immersion can be a psychological state. One of the things I'm very interested in is our relationship to nature, and I think we would all agree that this is a crucial part of our collective future. It's fundamentally so. And over the years I've done a series of works where I've used projectors to project onto nature about themes that pertain to nature. This is a work called Natura Vitibus, the nature forces in the Latin, and it's utilising, so it's about exploring the idea of the energy forces that are within nature and that aren't necessarily apparent to us as humans because they're happening in different timescales. And in some ways, what I'm trying to exemplify to the audience is that we need to think about and understand that there are these forces that are there, and by hyper extending using these projection techniques, this notion of the energy that exists within nature, but also a little bit of a pushback. The fact that nature, whatever happens with humanity, nature will reign, and nature does push back to humanity, despite how we may not always treat the environment as well as we should. And part of this is also enabled using a soundtrack. I create all my own soundtracks, and I'm very interested in the sound component as a mood enhancer and a mood amplifier. And that's certainly the case in this. Technically, it's a 360 3D mapped undertaking. So I've actually surrounded the tree, in this instance on the North Terrace, the cultural precinct of Adelaide, for a 2-week-long public light festival called Illuminate Adelaide, and 360 continuous projection all the way around the tree, but all of it mapped onto the tree. So very careful, technically quite a interesting challenge, I would have to say. So I'm going to leave you with this 1 minute 20 video, and thank you for your time, your attention, and of course I think it's up to all of us to create an enjoyable future for everybody. 谢谢.
谢谢 Tim 啊 ，Tim 用他最精彩的这个实践，给我们今天下午的论坛画上一个圆满的句号。我见到 Tim 非常的熟悉，因为我呢在2013年的时候，我和他一起在798做了个个展啊，然后我们双个展。当初我们也是用新媒体艺术影像的方式做了一个，后来我们在2016年的时候，在新西兰又做了双个展，所以今天又见到老朋友，同样他保持着旺盛的创造力，在不同的空间展现他在艺术媒介上的这种探索，来探讨人和自然啊，人和环境，人和人和人和社会之间的互动。那么我也祝愿他借今天的机会啊，祝愿他的艺术越做越好，也祝愿他的艺术的成果会更多的分享给我们。